In the land of Sumer, where the Tigris River flows, a legendary king ruled with unparalleled power and wisdom. His name was Gilgamesh, 2/3 god and 1/3 human, a demigod with a heart of gold and a will of iron. His story has been passed down through the ages, a testament to the enduring power of friendship, love, and the human spirit. Join me on a journey through the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, where myth and history blend like the sands of time. Let us venture into the realm of Gilgamesh, a king who sought immortality but found something far more precious. A tale of adventure, of friendship, of love and loss, of the human condition and the quest for eternal life. In the city of Uruk, where the sun rises over the ziggurat, a king was born, destined to rule with wisdom and courage. Chapter 1. The Big Boss of Uruk. The sky was hot and orange, like a giant burnt pancake. Down below, a giant city called Uruk stretched out like a sandcastle. Its walls were made of mud bricks, baked hard by the hot sun. This city was ruled by a king named Gilgamesh, who was the biggest, strongest guy around. Think the best wrestler you ever saw, but even way stronger. Gilgamesh had eyes like shiny black rocks, and he could knock out a bull with one punch. He was like a walking storm cloud, full of power and energy. Under his watch, Uruk became super rich. The city had big barns overflowing with yummy food and workshops where people made all sorts of cool stuff. Gilgamesh even built giant walls around the city to keep everyone safe. It looked amazing, but there was a problem. Even though the city was getting richer, people weren't happy anymore. At first, they were excited because Gilgamesh was so strong. But now, they were tired of him always wanting his own way. He liked staying up late partying all night, and all day long he just wanted to fight more and more battles. The walls he built to keep them safe started to feel like a giant fence, trapping them inside. People started talking in hushed voices. Even the singers who used to sing happy songs about Gilgamesh were now making sad songs. They sang about how Gilgamesh cared more about gold than his people, and how he was always fighting instead of taking care of the city. One girl named Enkidu heard all these whispers. She wasn't scared of Gilgamesh like everyone else. Instead, she felt mad. Uruk, the city that was supposed to be the best because of Gilgamesh, was starting to feel yucky. Enkidu knew something had to change. She didn't know how, but she knew Uruk needed a new way, a way that wasn't all about fighting and partying. Chapter 2. Help from up above. Way up in the sky, far beyond the hottest part of the sun, lived a bunch of super important dudes called gods. These gods were kind of like big bosses who watched over everything down on Earth, especially a place called Mesopotamia, where Uruk was. They were pretty happy with how things were going for a while, but then they started to get grumpy. The reason they got grumpy was because of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Remember him? The super strong guy who liked to party all night? Well, the gods didn't like how he was acting anymore. They thought he was being a big bully to his people. He was supposed to take care of them, not boss them around all the time. The head honcho god, who everyone called Anu, decided they had to do something. They couldn't just let Gilgamesh keep acting like a jerk. So, Anu had a meeting with all the other gods. They sat around on giant clouds, sipping on drinks that never ran out, and talked about what to do. One of the gods, who was really good at making things out of clay, had an idea. "Why don't we make another super strong person?" he suggested. "Someone who can challenge Gilgamesh and maybe teach him a lesson about being a good king." The other gods thought this was a great idea. So, the clay-making god got to work. He took a giant lump of wet clay and started shaping it into a person. He made them really strong, just like Gilgamesh, but also wild and free. This new person wouldn't care about fancy clothes or hoped that Enkidu would show Gilgamesh how to be a better leader, someone who cared about his people more than just his own strength. Chapter 3. Rumble in the Big City. Enkidu, the super strong wild dude the gods made out of clay, was living his best life. He roamed the wilderness, wrestling lions like they were kittens and running with gazelles as fast as the wind. He didn't need fancy clothes or parties. He just loved being free and strong. One day, Enkidu stumbled upon a group of hunters. They were all sweaty and grumpy because they couldn't get past a watering hole. Enkidu, who wasn't very good at talking yet, just walked right up and scared all the wild animals away with a mighty roar. The hunters were amazed. They told Enkidu all about this amazing city called Uruk, ruled by the strongest guy ever, Gilgamesh. Remember him, the party animal king? The hunters explained how Gilgamesh was acting like a big shot, bossing everyone around and only caring about himself. Enkidu didn't like the sound of that. He decided he would go to Uruk and teach Gilgamesh a lesson about being a good leader. So, Enkidu marched into Uruk like a one-man parade. He was all dirty and hairy, and he didn't care about anyone staring. When he got to the center of the city, he saw something that made him even madder. It was a giant party for Gilgamesh, with everyone bowing down to him and acting all scared. Enkidu couldn't take it anymore. He let out a roar that shook the whole city and challenged Gilgamesh to a fight. Gilgamesh, who thought he was the toughest guy around, wasn't going to back down from some smelly wild dude. The two of them went at it like crazy. They punched, they kicked, they wrestled. It was the biggest fight anyone in Uruk had ever seen. The whole city stopped what they were doing to watch. They were scared at first, but then something amazing happened. As they fought, Enkidu and Gilgamesh realized they were pretty evenly matched. They were both strong, fast, and wouldn't give up. But after a while, they both got tired. They stopped fighting and just stared at each other, panting. Then, something even more amazing happened. They started laughing. They realized they had just met someone who could actually beat them in a fight. Enkidu and Gilgamesh, who started out as enemies, became best friends right there on the spot. The gods up in the sky were cheering. Their plan had worked. Enkidu had shown Gilgamesh how to be a better leader, someone who respected his people and wasn't afraid of a good challenge. From that day on, Enkidu and Gilgamesh would rule Uruk together, a team of super strong best friends. Chapter 4. Monster in the Woodpile. Uruk was buzzing with excitement. Gilgamesh, the king-sized strongman, and his new best bud, Enkidu, the wild man made of clay, were about to set off on their first adventure together. Forget boring old parties. This was going to be an epic quest to slay a monster. Their target? A grumpy beast named Humbaba, who lived in a super creepy place called the Cedar Forest. This forest was full of giant trees that reached all the way to the sky, and the ground was covered with prickly bushes and twisty vines. It was like a giant jungle maze, only way spookier. The reason they wanted to fight Humbaba was because he was a big bully who wouldn't let anyone chop down any of the cool cedar trees. Gilgamesh, being the strong guy he was, thought that was super unfair. People needed wood to build houses and stuff, and Humbaba was just hogging all the good trees for himself. So, Gilgamesh and Enkidu packed their bags with yummy food, grabbed their shiniest weapons, think giant axes and pointy swords, and set off for the creepy cedar forest. The journey was no walk in the park. The forest was dark and gloomy, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. Every rustle in the bushes sounded like a monster, and every shadow looked like a giant creepy claw. One night, while they were huddled around a campfire, trying to keep warm, Gilgamesh had a bad dream. He dreamt of a giant mountain falling on them and crushing them both. Enkidu, who was kind of like a dream whisperer, calmed him down. He said the dream wasn't scary, it was actually a good sign. The mountain was Humbaba, and they were going to crush him just like the mountain crushed them in the dream. Feeling braver, Gilgamesh and Enkidu pressed on. Finally, after days of walking and dodging creepy crawlies, they reached the heart of the forest. There, in a clearing filled with the smell of old wood, stood Humbaba. He was a giant dude, even bigger than Gilgamesh, with fiery red hair and eyes that glowed like embers. His voice boomed like a thunderstorm, and his breath smelled like rotten eggs. Humbaba wasn't happy to see them. He roared and threatened to turn them into monster snacks. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu weren't scared. They had faced worse, like a giant fight in the middle of Uruk. They charged at Humbaba, a whirlwind of flashing swords and swinging axes. The battle raged. The ground shook, trees fell down, and it sounded like a whole pack of angry elephants were having a stomp party. It was a tough fight, but Gilgamesh and Enkidu fought side by side, their friendship making them stronger. In the end, with a mighty blow from both of them, they managed to defeat the grumpy guardian of the forest. Humbaba let out a roar that shook the very leaves on the trees, then slumped to the ground with a big thud. Silence filled the clearing, except for the ragged breathing of our two heroes. Gilgamesh and Enkidu had done it. They had slayed the monstrous Humbaba and saved the cedar trees, and maybe all the innocent people who needed wood to build stuff. They stood there, chest puffed out, best friends forever, ready for whatever epic adventure awaited them next. Chapter 5. Big Win, Big Trouble. Gilgamesh and Enkidu were the toast of Uruk. Everyone cheered for the super strong best friends who had ventured into the creepy cedar forest and slayed the monstrous Humbaba. They were heroes. But back up in the sky castle world, things weren't so happy. The gods, especially Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, were throwing a major tantrum. Why was Ishtar mad? Well, she had a bit of a crush on Gilgamesh, the whole strong and handsome thing, you know? But Gilgamesh, ever the party animal, wasn't interested. He was too busy hanging out with his new best bud, Enkidu, and celebrating their victory over Humbaba. Ishtar was fuming. How dare Gilgamesh reject her like some dusty old sandal? She stomped around her sparkly cloud palace, throwing lightning bolts at random clouds. Not a good idea, by the way. It made for some pretty grumpy weather down on Earth. The other gods watched nervously, hoping Ishtar wouldn't accidentally zap one of them. Finally, Anu, the big boss god, had enough. He told Ishtar to calm down and act like a grown-up goddess, which, wasn't always easy. But Ishtar wouldn't listen. She was still mad at Gilgamesh for rejecting her, and she wanted revenge. So, she came up with a super mean plan. She would unleash a giant, fire-breathing bull on Uruk, Gilgamesh's city. This bull wouldn't be like the cute, cuddly cows down on the farm. It would be a snorting, stomping, super angry monster that would wreak havoc on everything and everyone. Ishtar stomped her sparkly sandal on the ground, which, by the way, caused a mini earthquake down on Earth. Thanks a lot, Ishtar. And in a puff of smoke and angry mooing, the bull of heaven appeared. It was a giant beast, all red and snorty, with eyes that glowed like hot coals. Pawed the ground impatiently, ready to cause some serious destruction in Uruk. The other gods watched in horror. Ishtar had gone too far this time. They knew unleashing the bull of heaven was a bad idea, but there was no stopping a goddess on a rampage. Now, it was up to Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the heroes of Uruk, to face the wrath of a very cranky cow and save their city from fiery destruction. Chapter 6: The Battle with the Bull of Heaven. The once peaceful sky above Uruk churned a sickly yellow. A low rumble, like the belly of a disgruntled giant, vibrated through the ground. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped the hearts of the city's people. They huddled together in doorways and behind flimsy walls, their eyes darting nervously towards the heavens. Suddenly, the churning yellow split open. A monstrous head, the size of a house, emerged, snorting flames and bellowing a sound that shattered windows and sent shivers down spines. It was the Bull of Heaven, a creature conjured from Ishtar's fury, a walking inferno with eyes that glowed like molten lava. Gilgamesh, ever the fearless leader, stood on the highest point of the city wall, his gaze unwavering. Beside him, Enkidu, his loyal friend and companion, bristled with a wild energy. They had faced many dangers together, but this beast, this embodiment of divine wrath, sent a tremor of unease even through their hardened hearts. The Bull of Heaven, nostrils flaring like bellows, lumbered towards the city walls. The earth trembled with its every step, and with each thunderous snort, a gout of flame engulfed the air, scorching the earth and casting an eerie orange glow over the city. "This is our city," Gilgamesh roared, his voice a defiant echo against the bull's bellowing. "We will not let it fall." Enkidu, ever the strategist, observed the beast. It sprang like molten lava. Gilgamesh, ever the fearless leader, stood on the highest point of the city wall, his gaze unwavering. Beside him, Enkidu, his loyal friend and companion, bristled with a wild energy. They had faced many dangers together, but this beast, this embodiment of divine wrath, sent a tremor of unease even through their hardened hearts. The Bull of Heaven, nostrils flaring like bellows, lumbered towards the city walls. The earth trembled with its every step, and with each thunderous snort, a gout of flame engulfed the air, scorching the earth and casting an eerie orange glow over the city. "This is our city," Gilgamesh roared, his voice a defiant echo against the bull's bellowing. "We will not let it fall." Enkidu, ever the strategist, observed the beast. Its fiery breath seemed to be its main weapon, but it was also its weakness. The beast was slow, its movements cumbersome, weighed down by its immense size. A plan began to form in Enkidu's mind. As the Bull of Heaven lowered its massive head to smash through the symbol, ever the strategist, observed the beast. Its fiery breath seemed to be its main weapon, but it was also its weakness. The beast was slow, its movements cumbersome, weighed down by its immense size. A plan began to form in Enkidu's mind. As the Bull of Heaven lowered its massive head to smash through the city gate, Enkidu sprang forward. With a roar that rivaled the beast's, he charged towards it, his movements a blur of speed and agility. Gilgamesh, understanding Enkidu's plan, readied his axe, its polished surface glinting menacingly in the firelight. Enkidu, a whirlwind of wild fury, used his incredible speed to dart around the lumbering bull. He expertly dodged its fiery breath, his laughter echoing in the tense air. He taunted the beast, drawing its attention away from the city walls. The enraged bull of heaven, frustrated by its elusive prey, turned its fiery gaze on Enkidu, its massive head swinging wildly in a desperate attempt to catch him. This was Enkidu's moment. With a final, daring leap, he scrambled onto the bull's back, clinging to its thick hide with all his might. The bull roared in surprise and anger, thrashing its head and bucking its massive body in an attempt to dislodge the tenacious Enkidu. Gilgamesh, seizing this opportunity, sprinted towards the thrashing beast. He dodged a gout of scorching flame and, with a Herculean leap, landed on the bull's opportunity, sprinted towards the thrashing beast. He dodged a gout of scorching flame and, with a Herculean leap, landed on the bull's back behind Enkidu. The bull, its fury redoubling, reared back, its hooves pawing at the sky. They were on the back of a raging inferno, clinging on for dear life. The stench of sulfur filled their nostrils, and the intense heat threatened to sear their skin. But fear was a luxury they couldn't afford. With a silent exchange of glances, Gilgamesh and Enkidu knew what they had to do. Enkidu, using his immense strength, wrestled with the bull's horns, trying to steer it away from the city walls. Gilgamesh, seizing a moment when the bull tilted its head, raised his axe high above his head. His muscles strained with effort. Then, with a mighty cry, he brought the axe down with all his power. The axe bit deep, severing a massive tendon in the bull's leg. The beast let out a world-shaking bellow, its thrashing intensifying as it stumbled and fell to its knees. The impact sent Gilgamesh and Enkidu tumbling to the ground. They scrambled to their feet, battered but not broken. The bull of heaven lay before them, a monstrous carcass groaning in its death throes. The flames that had enveloped it began to sputter and fade, leaving behind a thick cloud of acrid smoke. The people of Uruk, witnessing the fall of the fiery beast, erupted in cheers. Relief washed over them, their fear replaced with a surge of grateful awe for their fearless heroes. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, standing amidst the carnage, their bodies scarred and weary, shared a smile. They had faced a creature of divine fury and emerged victorious, their bond forged anew in the fires of battle. Yet, a shadow lingered in their hearts. They had challenged the gods and won, but they knew this victory could come at a great cost. The wrath of Ishtar. Chapter 7. Sickness takes a friend. The people of Uruk cheered like crazy. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, their best buds forever, had just beaten up a giant, fire-breathing bull sent by a grumpy goddess. But things weren't all sunshine and rainbows. Enkidu, who had been wrestling with the bull on its back, didn't look so good anymore. He was all sweaty and pale, and he didn't have his usual wild energy. Gilgamesh, worried sick, rushed to his friend's side. Enkidu was burning up like a really hot oven. He coughed and sputtered, and his voice was just a whisper. "We did it, my friend," he rasped, his hand weak in Gilgamesh's giant grip. "We saved Uruk." Gilgamesh, tears welling up in his eyes, even the strongest guys cry sometimes, tried to reassure him. "Don't worry, Enkidu," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The best healers in Uruk will fix you right up. You'll be wrestling bulls again in no time." But deep down, Gilgamesh knew things weren't that simple. This wasn't a normal sickness. Enkidu had been messing with the gods, remember? Beating up a giant fireball they sent wasn't exactly polite. And the gods, especially that grumpy goddess Ishtar, weren't known for being good sports. For days and nights, Gilgamesh stayed by Enkidu's side. The healers did everything they could, but it was no use. Enkidu grew weaker and weaker. His once bright eyes became dull, and his laughter, which used to fill the room, faded away. One night, as the moon cast an eerie glow through the window, Enkidu's breathing became shallow. He squeezed Gilgamesh's hand one last time. "Don't be sad, my friend," he whispered. "We had an adventure, didn't we? We saved our city. That's the coolest thing ever." And with that, Enkidu's hand went limp. His eyes fluttered shut, and his breathing stopped. Gilgamesh, the strongest man in Uruk, the guy who could wrestle bowls and party all night, fell to his knees and sobbed. His best friend, his partner in adventure, was gone. The victory over the Bull of Heaven felt hollow now. All that was left was a gaping hole in Gilgamesh's heart. Didn't we? We saved our city. That's the coolest thing ever. And with that, Enkidu's hand went limp. His eyes fluttered shut, and his breathing stopped. Gilgamesh, the strongest man in Uruk, the guy who could wrestle bowls and party all night, fell to his knees and sobbed. His best friend, his partner in adventure, was gone. The victory over the Bull of Heaven felt hollow now. All that was left was a gaping hole in Gilgamesh's heart. He had never felt so alone, so scared. For the first time in his life, Gilgamesh truly understood the meaning of death. It wasn't just something that happened to other people. It could take away the ones you loved the most. The death of Enkidu would change Gilgamesh forever. It would send him on a desperate quest for immortality, a search for a way to cheat death and bring his friend back. But that's a story for another chapter. Chapter 8, The Big Sleep Monster. Uruk was draped in a heavy silence. The cheers that had erupted after the fiery bull's defeat had long faded, replaced by a suffocating quiet. Gilgamesh, his usual swagger gone, wandered through the empty palace like a lost ghost. Enkidu, his best friend, his partner in crazy adventures, was gone. One minute he was there, weak but alive, the next, a cold, still body. The thought of it sent a shiver down Gilgamesh's spine. Enkidu, the strongest guy he knew after himself, just stopped. It felt unfair, impossible. Gilgamesh had always thought he was invincible, that he could live forever. But seeing Enkidu, so young and full of life, fade away like a dying fire, shattered that illusion. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares filled his head, Enkidu's weak smile fading, the monstrous bull-breathing fire, a giant hand reaching down from the sky to snatch him away. He woke up every time, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding like a drum solo. The once thrilling stories of heroes and their journeys after death now filled him with dread. Tales of dark underworlds and shadowy figures who judged the dead seemed less like adventure and more like a terrifying unknown. One day, while staring out of a palace window, a withered old man caught Gilgamesh's eye. The man shuffled through the market, his back bent, his face etched with wrinkles. Even from a distance, Gilgamesh could see the frailty, the undeniable march of time stamped all over him. The sight sent a jolt through Gilgamesh. Would he too become like that old man? Would his strength eventually fade? Would his heart eventually give out, leaving him cold and lifeless like Enkidu? Panic clawed at him. He couldn't accept it. He wouldn't. There had to be a way to cheat death, a way to live forever. He had to find it. Gilgamesh, his eyes burning with a new kind of fire, summoned his advisors. There must be a way to escape the clutches of the big sleep monster, he declared, using a new nickname for death. Find me someone who knows the secret to eternal. He had to find it. face etched with wrinkles. Even from a distance, Gilgamesh could see the frailty, the undeniable march of time stamped all over him. The sight sent a jolt through Gilgamesh. Would he too become like that old man? Would his strength eventually fade? Would his heart eventually give out, leaving him cold and lifeless like Enkidu? Panic clawed at him. He couldn't accept it. He wouldn't. There had to be a way to cheat death, a way to live forever. He had to find it. Gilgamesh, his eyes burning with a new kind of fire, summoned his advisors. There must be a way to escape the clutches of the big sleep monster, he declared, using a new nickname for death. Find me someone who knows the secret to eternal life. The advisors exchanged nervous glances. The king's obsession was worrying, but Gilgamesh wouldn't be deterred. He would scour the earth, climb the highest mountains, sail the deepest oceans. He would find a way to cheat death or die trying. And so began Gilgamesh's grand quest for immortality, a desperate search for a way to live forever. It would be a journey filled with danger, with encounters with mythical creatures and journeys to forgotten lands. But for Gilgamesh, it was a race against time, a desperate attempt to outrun the shadow of death that had fallen upon him. Chapter 9: Mountains that touch the sky and sands that swallow whole. Fueled by grief and desperate hope of cheating death, Gilgamesh embarked on a perilous quest. His destination, Utnapishtim, the only man said to have achieved immortality. Legend spoke of him surviving the Great Deluge, a massive flood sent by the gods to wipe out humanity. If anyone knew the secret to eternal life, it was Utnapishtim. The journey was fraught with danger. Gilgamesh, used to the comforts of his palace, found himself facing unforgiving landscapes. Towering mountains, their peaks scraping the clouds, formed the first hurdle. Razor-sharp rocks tore at his clothes and boots. Thin air made his lungs burn, and icy winds whipped across his face. Yet, Gilgamesh pressed on, driven by the image of Enkidu's fading smile. Days bled into weeks as he scaled treacherous cliffs and navigated treacherous paths. Fearsome creatures, born from myth and legend, lurked in the shadows. Giant scorpions with glowing eyes guarded mountain passes, their pincers clicking menacingly. Gilgamesh, using his legendary strength and a newfound caution, managed to bypass them, their warnings of the dangers ahead ringing in his ears. Finally, he emerged from the mountain's grasp, only to find himself facing a seemingly endless sea of sand. The scorching sun beat down mercilessly, turning the sand into a shimmering furnace. His throat parched, his lips cracked. Gilgamesh trudged on, guided only by the faint hope that lay ahead. Days turned into weeks again. Mirages shimmered in the distance, taunting him with visions of cool oases. Sandstorms raged, engulfing him in a swirling vortex of grit and wind. He navigated by the stars, the only constant in this ever-shifting landscape. Exhaustion gnawed at him. Doubt crept into his heart. Had he been misled? Was Utnapishtim just a myth? But giving up wasn't an option. He had come too far, lost too much to turn back now. Chapter 10: Trials of a Desperate King. The cool water of the oasis was like a kiss on Gilgamesh's parched lips. After weeks of battling the unforgiving desert, this haven felt like a paradise. But Gilgamesh knew rest was a luxury he couldn't afford. This oasis was merely a pit stop on his arduous journey for immortality. Leaving the oasis behind, he ventured further into the unknown. Legends spoke of trials guarding the path to Utnapishtim, tests to weed out the unworthy. Each challenge he faced was designed to break his spirit, to reveal if his desire for eternal life stemmed from true purpose or blind ambition. The first trial came in the form of a pair of monstrous scorpions, their glistening exoskeletons reflecting the harsh sunlight. These weren't the mountain scorpions he had faced before. These were colossal, their pincers dripping with a venom rumored to instantly turn flesh to dust. Drawing on his battle-honed reflexes and the cunning he'd developed on his journey, Gilgamesh managed to outsmart the creatures. He lured them away from the path, using the desert's shifting sands to create a treacherous maze. Disoriented and frustrated, the scorpions eventually turned on each other, their battle creating a window for Gilgamesh to slip past. The next trial was a labyrinth carved into the side of a towering mountain. Twisted paths branched out in every direction, filled with cryptic riddles and illusions. One wrong turn could spell disaster, a hidden pit, a deadly trap, or an encounter with some unseen guardian. But Gilgamesh, used to navigating the twists and turns of political intrigue, found his mind surprisingly sharp. He deciphered the riddles with a newfound patience, his desire for immortality fueling his focus. He remembered the lessons learned in his court, where deciphering hidden meanings and outwitting opponents was a daily game. Finally, after days spent wandering the labyrinth, he found the exit. Exhausted but triumphant, he emerged into a lush valley, a stark contrast to the harsh landscapes he'd traversed. But he knew this wasn't a place to linger. Utnapishtim, and the answer to his quest awaited. The trials didn't stop there. He faced ferocious man-eating lions, navigated rivers filled with treacherous currents, and outsmarted cunning shapeshifters. Each challenge tested his strength, his wit, and his resolve. With each victory, Gilgamesh's determination grew stronger. He couldn't afford to falter now. He had come too far, sacrificed too much, to give up on the brink of his goal. The trials themselves were becoming a strange test. They weren't just about strength and cunning. They were about forcing him to confront his own mortality. Each near-death experience brought him face to face with the very thing he was trying to escape. Gilgamesh, the once arrogant king, was becoming more humble, more aware of his own limitation. He was starting to understand that perhaps true immortality wasn't about living forever, but about the experiences he gathered along the way. Chapter 11, Face to Face with the Immortal. After a journey that felt like an eternity, Gilgamesh finally stood at the entrance to a hidden paradise. Lush gardens bloomed in vibrant colors, and a crystal-clear river snaked through the landscape. This was the home of Utnapishtim, the sole survivor of the Great Deluge and the rumored keeper of the secret to immortality. Gilgamesh, his once proud posture now etched with weariness, approached the entrance. A weathered man, his face a map of wrinkles etched by time, stood guard. Who dares disturb the peace of Utnapishtim's haven? He boomed. Gilgamesh, his voice hoarse from dust and travel, explained his arduous quest. He spoke of his grief over Enkidu, his fear of death, and his burning desire to cheat mortality. The guard listened patiently, then nodded towards the garden. Enter, traveler, and plead your case before Utnapishtim himself. Gilgamesh crossed the threshold, his heart hammering in his chest. There, under the shade of a giant tree, sat a man who seemed ageless. His eyes, though kind, held the wisdom of countless years. This was Utnapishtim. With a mixture of respect and urgency, Gilgamesh poured out his story. He spoke of his fear of the big sleep monster. He begged Utnapishtim to share the secret of eternal life. Utnapishtim listened intently, his face betraying no emotion. When Gilgamesh finished, A long silence settled between them. Finally, Utnapishtim spoke, his voice soft but firm. "Gilgamesh," he began, "mortality is a gift, not a curse. It is what gives life its meaning, its urgency. The gods do not share their immortality with humans. To live forever is to be stagnant, to never grow or change." Gilgamesh scoffed. "But you, Utnapishtim, you survived the great deluge. You hold the key to everlasting life." Utnapishtim smiled sadly. "The deluge was a punishment for humanity's wickedness. I was chosen to carry on the human race, not to defy the laws of nature. My longevity is a gift, not a choice." He gestured to the garden around them. "Look around you, Gilgamesh. This beauty, this life, it all exists because of the cycle of growth and decay. Would a flower bloom forever if it never wilted?" Gilgamesh's gaze swept over the vibrant flowers, the trickling river, the buzzing insects. A strange sense of peace settled over him. Perhaps Utnapishtim was right. Perhaps the answer to his quest wasn't eternal life, but appreciating the life he already had. Utnapishtim continued, "You have undertaken a great journey, Gilgamesh. You have faced trials and challenges that would break most men. This is what truly matters, the experiences you gather." Disappointment gnawed at Gilgamesh, but a new understanding bloomed alongside it. He may not have found a way to cheat death, but his journey had changed him. He had faced his fears, tested his limits, and learned valuable lessons. Utnapishtim, sensing the shift in Gilgamesh, offered a small smile. "Though you may not live forever, your deeds and stories might. Return to Uruk, Gilgamesh, and rule with wisdom and compassion. Let your journey be an inspiration to others." Gilgamesh, his heart heavy but his spirit lighter, bowed his head. He didn't have the answer he sought, but he had gained something far more valuable, a newfound appreciation for life, and the legacy he could leave behind. Chapter 12. The Sweetness of a Finite Feast. The lush gardens of Utnapishtim's haven felt less like a paradise and more like a mirror reflecting Gilgamesh's shattered dream. Immortality, the shimmering mirage that had driven him across scorching deserts and treacherous mountains, now stood, revealed as a cruel illusion. Yet, a strange sense of peace settled over him, a peace born not from achieving his goal, but from finally understanding its fallacy. Utnapishtim, his weathered face etched with the wisdom of ages, observed Gilgamesh with kind eyes. "The human heart craves what it cannot have," he said gently. "But sometimes, the greatest treasures lie not in defying fate, but in embracing it." Gilgamesh nodded, the weight of his journey settling on his shoulders. He had envisioned eternal life as a never-ending feast, a constant state of power and pleasure. But Utnapishtim's words offered a different kind of feast, a rich tapestry woven with experiences, both joyous and sorrowful, that gave life its meaning. "Tell me," Utnapishtim continued, "what did you see on your journey? Did you witness the sunrise over a majestic mountain range? Did you feel the cool spray of a waterfall on your skin? Did you share laughter with a stranger under a starry sky?" Memories flooded Gilgamesh's mind, the breathtaking peaks that scraped the heavens, the refreshing oasis that saved his life from the desert's scorching embrace, the camaraderie he shared with his guide as they navigated treacherous paths. These weren't just obstacles he'd overcome. They were experiences that had enriched his life. I never thought of it that way," Gilgamesh admitted, a flicker of understanding lighting up his eyes. He had been so fixated on the end goal, on living forever, that he had missed the beauty of the journey itself. Utnapishtim smiled. "Mortality, Gilgamesh, is not a curse, but a gift. It gives our experiences a precious edge, a sense of urgency. Each sunrise is a reminder of the fleeting nature of life, making each moment all the more precious. Gilgamesh thought back to his life in Uruk. He had ruled with an iron fist, focused on accumulating power and indulging in fleeting pleasures. Now, he saw his past actions through a new lens. Had he been so obsessed with leaving his mark on the world that he had forgotten to truly live in it? Perhaps a wise king does not strive for eternal reign, Gilgamesh mused aloud, but for a reign that leaves a lasting impact, one that cherishes the lives of his people. Utnapishtim nodded approvingly. Return to Uruk, Gilgamesh, not as a king who defies death. Let your experiences be a beacon that guides your people. Build a city that thrives, not just for generations to come, but for each moment you have left to cherish. As Gilgamesh prepared to leave the haven, his heart, though heavy with the acceptance of his mortality, felt lighter than it had in years. He wouldn't live forever, but his journey, his struggles, and his newfound wisdom could. He could create a legacy that would inspire his people long after he was gone. The quest for immortality had ended, but a new journey, a journey of purpose and acceptance, had just begun. The quest for immortality had ended, but a new journey, a journey of purpose and acceptance, had just begun. Gilgamesh, the once invincible king, walked back towards Uruk, no longer seeking to defy death, but to embrace the precious sweetness of a finite feast. Chapter 13. A King Reborn. The gates of Uruk swung open, not to a conquering hero returning from a fantastical quest, but to a weary traveler, his face etched with the lines of a long journey and a newfound wisdom. Gilgamesh, the once arrogant king obsessed with power and immortality, had been reborn in the crucible of his trials. The cheers of the crowd, once a source of validation, now seemed a distant echo. His focus had shifted. Utnapishtim's words resonated within him. Life wasn't about defying death, but about embracing the experiences that gave it meaning. Instead of immediately embarking on a conquest to expand his kingdom, Gilgamesh turned his attention to the city walls that had protected him during the Bull of Heaven's attack. They were sturdy, but showed signs of wear and tear. He ordered repairs, not with the usual focus on grandeur, but on making them strong enough to truly safeguard his people. He spent his days not just in opulent halls, surrounded by fawning advisors, but also walking the bustling streets of Uruk. He talked to merchants about trade, listened to farmers' woes about the recent drought, and even shared a laugh with children playing in the market square. The people of Uruk, at first bewildered by their king's change of heart. The gruff warrior king who had demanded blind obedience was gone. In his place stood a leader who listened, empathized, and sought to understand their needs. Gilgamesh commissioned artists to paint murals on the city walls, not depicting scenes of his conquests, but of everyday life: farmers tending their crops, families sharing meals, children playing games. He wanted to remind his people of the beauty and fragility of the life they shared. He also ordered the construction of gardens within the city walls, pockets of green amidst the bustling streets. Here, people could find respite from the harsh sun, breathe in the scent of blooming flowers, and enjoy a moment of peace. The whispers started as a murmur, then grew into a chorus. The king was different. The king cared. It wasn't the fearsome power of Gilgamesh that inspired his people anymore, but his empathy and his newfound appreciation for the simple joys of life. Of course, there were those who still craved the old Gilgamesh, the ruthless conqueror. But their voices grew fainter with each passing day. Gilgamesh having faced his own mortality, understood the importance of leaving a legacy not of fear and conquest, but of a thriving city and a people who felt cherished. He may not have achieved immortality, but his journey had transformed him into a king worthy of being remembered, not for how long he ruled, but for the positive impact he had on the lives of his people. The legend of Gilgamesh, once a tale of arrogance and obsession, was taking a new turn, becoming a story of redemption, self-discovery, and the true meaning of a meaningful life. Chapter 14: Echoes of a King's Transformation. Years flowed by, like the mighty Euphrates River, carving pathways through time. Gilgamesh, the once invincible king, had aged gracefully. His hair, once a raven's wing, had turned the silver of moonlight, and the lines on his face were a map of his experiences. Yet, his eyes still held a spark of the adventurous spirit that had driven him on his grand quest. Uruk, under Gilgamesh's transformed leadership, had blossomed into a beacon of prosperity. The sturdy city walls, no longer testaments to conquest, served as a symbol of security and unity. The vibrant gardens pulsed with life, offering a haven for weary souls and a reminder of life's fleeting beauty. The murals on the city walls depicting everyday life had become a source of pride for the people. They saw themselves reflected, their labors, their joys, their struggles immortalized in art. It sparked a sense of belonging, a feeling of being part of something larger than themselves. The stories of Gilgamesh's adventures, whispered at first, now roared like a lion's thunder. Bards sang of his battles with the monstrous bull of heaven, his perilous journey to find Napishtim, and his ultimate acceptance of mortality. These stories weren't just tales of heroism. They were cautionary fables and testaments to the power of self-discovery. Enkidu, though gone, hadn't been forgotten. The tale of their unlikely friendship, a warrior and a wild man becoming brothers, resonated deeply with the people. It spoke to the importance of accepting differences, of finding strength in companionship, and of the enduring power of love. Beyond the walls of Uruk, whispers of Gilgamesh's transformation reached far and wide. Kings, once wary of his thirst for conquest, now saw him as a wise and compassionate leader. Trade flourished, as other cities sought to emulate Uruk's model of prosperity, built on the well-being of its people. Even the gods, it seemed, were impressed. Though they wouldn't grant Gilgamesh immortality, they chose to immortalize his story in the stars. The constellation Gemini, the twins, emerged as a celestial memory of the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, a reminder that true strength lies not in power, but in the connections we forge. Gilgamesh, sitting on the very walls he had refortified, gazed at the starlit sky. He knew his time on Earth was drawing to a close, but a wave of contentment washed over him. He had not cheated death, but he had lived a life rich in experiences, and left a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The story of Gilgamesh, the king who embraced his mortality, became a cornerstone of human literature. It served as a reminder that the truest treasures are not found in defying fate, but in cherishing the finite moments we have, in building lasting connections, and in leaving the world a better place than we found it. Two seemingly opposite beings, a powerful king and a wild man, forged a friendship that defied expectations. Their adventures together highlighted the power of companionship, the way it can challenge our perspectives and push us to become better versions of ourselves. The acceptance of mortality. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality may have ended in failure, but it led him to a more profound truth. Death, once a terrifying monster, became a part of life's natural cycle. It was this acceptance that allowed him to truly appreciate the preciousness of each moment. Living life to the fullest, Utnapishtim's wisdom shattered Gilgamesh's illusion of eternal pleasure. True satisfaction, he learned, wasn't found in endless feasts, but in embracing the experiences life offered: the beauty of nature, the love of friends, the challenges that tested his strength. This newfound appreciation for life became the driving force behind his transformation as a king. The power of legacy. Gilgamesh may not have conquered death, but he conquered something far greater: his own ego. By focusing on the well-being of his people and cherishing the simple moments, he built a legacy that transcended his physical life. His story became an inspiration, a reminder that the truest mark we leave on the world isn't measured in years, but in the positive impact we have on others. The wind carried these lessons far and wide, whispering them to storytellers, who in turn wove them into tales for future generations. Gilgamesh's journey may have ended, but the lessons he learned echoed through the ages, reminding us to cherish our friendships, embrace our mortality, and live each day to its fullest, for that in itself is a kind of immortality. Chapter 16. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a legacy etched in clay. Long after the wind had carried the echoes of Gilgamesh's reign, another kind of immortality began to take shape. In the bustling city of Uruk, scribes hunched over clay tablets, their styluses etching stories onto the damp surface. These weren't mere accounts of the king's deeds. They were the seeds of something far grander: the Epic of Gilgamesh. Each tablet held a fragment of Gilgamesh's story, his arrogance, his grief, his journey, and his transformation. Scribes, inspired by the tales passed down from bards and elders, meticulously recreated the epic using cuneiform, a complex system of wedge-shaped symbols. The process was long and arduous. Each tablet could only hold a limited amount of text, necessitating a meticulous piecing together of the entire narrative. But the scribes, fueled by a desire to preserve this extraordinary story, persevered. Years turned into decades, and the Epic of Gilgamesh grew. Tablets filled with the epic journey found their way to temples, libraries, and the royal palace. These clay tablets, seemingly unassuming, became vessels that held a timeless story. As Uruk's influence spread, so did the epic. Traders carried copies of the tablets to distant lands, where scribes in other cultures translated the cuneiform script. The story of Gilgamesh, though rooted in ancient Mesopotamia, began to transcend geographical boundaries. Generations of readers, from Babylonian kings to ordinary citizens, found themselves captivated by Gilgamesh's struggle with mortality. The epic served as a mirror, reflecting their own fears, aspirations, and questions about life's meaning. The epic wasn't just a story. It was a conversation that spanned generations. It challenged readers to confront their own mortality, to value their friendships, and to find meaning in the everyday moments. Its influence permeated art, literature, and philosophy, leaving its mark on countless works throughout history. Centuries later, when archaeologists unearthed these clay tablets from the sands of time, they rediscovered the Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient story, once whispered by the wind, now roared back to life. In museums and libraries around the world, these tablets stand as a testament to the enduring power of storytelling. The Epic of Gilgamesh, etched in clay, defied the limitations of time. It became a bridge connecting the ancient world to our own, proving that stories, like legacies, can transcend generations and cultures, reminding us that even the most ordinary materials can hold the most extraordinary tales. Chapter 17 whispers across millennia the enduring spirit of mankind. The Epic of Gilgamesh, etched in clay millennia ago, continues to resonate with readers today. Its power lies not just in its fantastical elements, but in the timeless truths. It explores truths about the human condition that transcend cultures and eras. The epic delves into the universal fear of death, a fear that continues to haunt humanity. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, though ultimately unsuccessful, becomes a springboard for a profound realization acceptance. By embracing his mortality, he learns to appreciate the preciousness of life and the experiences it offers. This core message resonates deeply with readers across generations. We all grapple with the concept of death, and the epic offers a path towards acceptance, urging us to live life to the fullest in the time we have. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu speaks to the universal power of friendship. Their unlikely companionship reminds us of the importance of connection, of how friendships challenge our perspectives and make us better versions of ourselves. It's a message that resonates in every age, reminding us to cherish the relationships that enrich our lives. The epic also explores the themes of leadership and legacy. Gilgamesh's transformation from a power-hungry tyrant to a wise and caring king underscores the importance of using power for the betterment of others. His legacy serves as an inspiration, urging us to leave a positive impact on the world around us. The Epic of Gilgamesh isn't merely a relic of the past. It's a living testament to the enduring spirit of mankind. The struggles, questions, and triumphs depicted within its pages continue to mirror our own. It serves as a bridge connecting generations, reminding us that despite the vast stretches of time, the core of the human experience remains remarkably similar. As long as humans yearn for connection, grapple with mortality, and strive to leave a positive mark on the world, the Epic of Gilgamesh will continue to hold relevance. It serves as a wellspring of valuable lessons, whispering wisdom across millennia, urging us to live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. The epic may end, but the conversation it started echoes on, a testament to the enduring power of storytelling and the timeless spirit of humanity.